Good morning, everybody. I'm Craig Zemke with the FSS. I'm here with Latasha White, and we're here to talk to you about the rollover process. Now, we're in various places with this, and so I apologize in advance. Some of you are going to be super bored because you've already done this, but we do have about 2,500, 2,700 kids, I think, this morning that need to be set up before we can roll over to the next year. So we're going to go through how you're going to go about doing that and what the impact for this whole process is going to be on a number of other processes. So it's not a huge deal, but it's very important to get this right now, or else lots of people are going to be very frustrated the first week in September. So without any further ado, thank you guys for logging in. I appreciate everyone coming together to plan this process out. So we're going to get started. Okay. So COPA rollover process. Now, for some of you, you've done this 14 times in the past, and for some of you, this is brand new because you didn't have any children enrolled last year. So we're going to try to cover this. This shouldn't be a long webinar, but we want to make sure there's some detail in here. Also, some things about the rollover and next year have changed, and I'll let you know about what those are at the end. If you have any questions, I should mention, please use the question field in the webinar app, and I'll see them come up and I'll respond to them that way, because I'm going to keep everybody else on mute so that it doesn't become difficult for people to hear. So here's the beginning. Our program year as it was set up ends on September 3rd, which is Labor Day, and which you may be aware is less than 2 weeks away now. So this is, you may have a different year for services, but the way COPA operates, everybody's on the same year, and we start the Tuesday after Labor Day, and then we go until the weekend before the next year. So when we talk about pre-rollover, and as we go forward here, pre-rollover is what everything that happens before August 31st, which has been a date that sounded like a long time from now for a long time, but is actually next Friday. So prior to the rollover, all children and families need to be prepared in COPA for rollover to the next year. That means we're going to decide where they're going to be next year, whether they're coming back, whether they're coming back to the same program, and so on. So children who are leaving the program are going to be set up to archive. Children who are returning with the same program model they're participating currently, they can be set to return, and children need to be placed on the waiting list if they're going to a different program, and they need to have their eligibility redetermined. So the 3 steps here are pre-rollover setup, the next year preparation for children, the next year preparation for families, and that's all that has to happen before we roll over. Now, when we talk about post-rollover, we're talking about things that can't be done until after we roll over. So this will be on or after September 4th, which is the first day of the program here. So we're going over this all together as one, but be aware, if you're done with the first part, you can't do the second part until after we roll over. So we're going to go over what it is, but you only have to worry about the rollover, the pre-rollover stuff, the next week or so. So the rollover, again, will occur next Friday. Users will not have access to the system beginning sometime on that afternoon. I'm going to guess that's going to end up being around 3 o'clock or so. So anything that needs to be done before that time. And we are not, by the way, going to stay here late for you to finish up your stuff. That's not going to happen. So who's responsible for the rollover process then? Everyone. Every program, every site needs to look in here and make sure that this is set up correctly. Many programs have specific people that are assigned for this, so make sure that you realize this, you have to have admin access in order to do the rollover setup process. So if you don't have, if the people you have listening to this webinar don't have admin access, we're going to be making this PowerPoint available several different ways over the next week. So make sure that you get it to someone with admin access who can set up the kids. Okay. So the next question for Head Start, early Head Start people are, when will my over-income children be approved? Because you may have known, there's actually only a few in there right now, but as of this week, we're not approving any more cases. And the reason for that is that program year is ending, and we track the over-income percentage based on cumulative enrollment for a program year. That means if you've enrolled 500 kids so far this year, you can have up to 50 of them be approved as over-income. So how many kids have you enrolled in the 18-19 program year yet? None, because it hasn't started yet. Therefore, 10% of 0 is 0. And when we get into the new program year, when you start to enroll eligible children, you will be able to have over-income children approved. But we can't be sure which children are returning until this whole process that we're going through right now is completed. So we can't tell 10% of what number we can approve. It is not based on your funded percentage. It's your funded enrollment number. It's based on who's actually enrolled. So if we approve 10% of your funded and then you end up being under-enrolled, we're out of compliance. So that's no fun. Okay. So after you roll over, for people who are new at this, especially, I want you to be aware so you're not completely alarmed when you come in on September 4th. Every program year in COPA is its own universe, and it's like we're ending the universe on the 31st, and then there's a new one that will be born the weekend afterward. So when you come in after rollover, there will be no children enrolled. There will not be in any classroom, and your enrollment will be 0. So the question is, where are they? So you'll come in and say, where are my kids? So children will be on the eligible accepted list or the waiting list, depending on how you set them up for rollover, which is what we're going to tell you how to do in just a moment. And you will have to place them in your classrooms for the next program year. Okay. Yeah, so I had a question. Will you be able to get this PowerPoint? Yes. We're going to do a couple things with this. We're going to try to send it out after we're done here. There'll be a link to this presentation as well. And we're going to give out some version of this on Thursday at the Executive Director, Program Director meeting, which everybody should, not everybody who is an Executive Director and or Program Director should come to. The rest of you don't even have to make the trip. Okay. Okay, so again, post rollover, the first thing you'll do is you'll set up your classes for the new year, making sure to set the start and end date. For some people, it will be, it'll be the same as the program year, and you'll be putting kids back in the same classroom. I know, though, there are some agencies who are making some changes in their program structure for the new year. So you have some half-day classes that are not going to be half-day classes next year. So in this case, make sure you're returning children to the new class. So if they were in, I don't know what you call it, Busy Bees AM or what have you, for this program year, but it's not a half-day classroom next year, you're going to want to make sure that you've got just a full-day classroom to put them in, and we'll inactivate the old one. I don't want the full-day kids in a room that's called half-day, because that will confuse them. Okay, so we'll go through that screen in a minute. So the basic instructions here, you have to log into COPA to set the kids up for rollover. You'll click on the admin tab, and you'll select child next year preparation. And then you'll select family next year preparation. I'll go through this in more detail in a moment here, but you should remember you have to do the children first, because you cannot set a family up to be archived unless you set the child up to do so first. It doesn't work the other way around. So you'll set up the children first, and you'll go back and decide what's happening with mom. And remember, and I'll say this again, when you set it up, you'll go through and you'll pick where every child is going. Remember to check the box on the left side before you hit submit, because it doesn't process the entire list. It'll only process the ones that you have selected on the left-hand side. So if you set everybody up, you hit submit, you didn't do that, you have to do it over again. It's frustrating. I don't like it either. So this is what it looks like specifically. It's a screenshot from last year, actually, but it's pretty much the same. Of the child next year preparation screen. So if you're looking at this, you see, first of all, we're looking at the enrolled children list. There are, this next year setup page has got several different lists that you're looking at. When you start out, all your enrolled children who have not been set up for rollover on the enrolled children list. And once you process them, they go somewhere else. This doesn't mean that they're not still enrolled. It just means they've been moved to a different list for next year. So if you see the other list, there's a returning back to eligible list, there's a recertified list, and a schedule for archive list. And the reason you can access those from this screen is if you do it wrong, like you set someone up for returning, and then you say, oh, he's not returning, why did I do that? You can go to the returning list, find that child, and send them back to the enrolled list and process them to the correct place. So it's more forgiving than some things are in COPA. But the idea here, you see on this list, it's filtered for my fake program here, but it's got the enrolled children list, and then in parentheses at the end it says 2. That's because these 2 children hadn't been set up for rollover. The idea is that we need that number to be 0, and the COPA software cannot roll over to the next year unless that number is 0. So every child has to have a goal set up, a place to go next year. And if there's one kid that isn't there, it won't roll over, which means that somebody here at the end of the day will go in there and choose something for them, which will probably archive them. But we don't want to do that to everybody, and you don't want us to do that to everybody. So make sure you get it right before we do it. So you see again at the bottom here, there's a box to the left, and then the status of where they're going to go, which is closer to the center of the screen. Again, both of those things have to be checked. It will only process the ones that we have selected. All right, now here's an important step. It's more important than I thought it was going to be based on some things that we found out over the last day or so, preparing for rollover. So once you click submit, it will show you this message that we're looking at. And you've got a choice. You can either proceed and set returning flags or proceed and don't set returning flags. You want to set returning flags just to make sure if it's related to the application for 3 to 5-year-old children, and you're making sure that the child who's returning has a returning spot available to them. And once that flag is set, after rollover, you'll be able to enroll them back in the classroom. They'll be, whatever their status was this year, they'll be classified as a returning child for next year. In most cases, you've already done that step for them, but you want to make sure to hit this anyway. Telling them to set them as returning again won't do any harm, but we're concerned that if you say do not set flags, you may be removing their flag. So we're checking on that, but just to be safe, just click the button that I've identified here, and it will move them to the returning list and make sure that their returning next year box is checked by the system. Now that will only be the case for the week and a half until rollover. After they roll over, we're assuming everything works right, which it looks like it's going to. they will now be a returning this year child, and COPA is going to automatically do a lot of work to make sure everybody's set up correctly for the 18-19 year. But in order to know that it's going to do that, it's got to have the flag for next year set right now, and this is how you do it. Okay, so here's the family next year preparation. Now this is why you have to make sure to do both, but this is why we want to do the children first. If you look at the screenshot that I'm showing you, and it's got the list of active families, you notice everybody can select discontinue services, but there's only a couple kids that you can see that give you the ability to select archive. And the reason that that's the way it looks is because you can't archive a family if the child is not archived. But you can do the other way around, because a family can have several children and with one child archived and other children active. So until you set up the children for rollover, nobody is able to archive. And after you do the setup, children, if you've marked the child as archived, then the parent can be archived too. And in most cases, that's what you want to do. I mean, if the child isn't coming back, the only reason you want the parent to come back is there's a sibling. But if the sibling is attached to the file now and marked as returning or on the waiting list or something like that, you won't be able to archive that family either. So the only parents that you can mark as archived are those where all the kids are either already archived or marked as archived for next year. So most of the time, you just want to click on select all above the archive, and it will only mark those families that don't have any active children or won't have any active children next year, and then hit submit. So you don't even have to think about it. You can't get it wrong. It's only going to let you archive the ones that don't have active children. So just go ahead, hit select all. Again, make sure to mark the box on the left-hand side and then submit. And it'll be taken care of. So there's a lot more, because like I said, a lot of you have already done the child setup, but very few people have done the family setup. There's thousands and thousands of parents that need to be set up. So I guess this is for most people, this is the most important step. Make sure your children are at 0, and then go over here and set the parents up. Okay. I have a request to use the mouse here. I didn't know you can see it. Can you see it? Woo, okay. If you can see it, here's what I'm talking about. These boxes on the left-hand side, these are the ones you have to make sure that they're selected. For this one, I would select all to archive, which won't archive everyone, only these boxes. And then mark this one to make sure the parents are selected. There you go. All right. If on the family list it shows as a returning, does that mean that someone has already started? Well, actually, the children are marked as returning. The way that this is set up, you see your only choices for family are discontinue and archive, and you have to start services again for the families. So if children are already set up, that does mean that someone has gone in and started the process of setting up for rollover. The reason you can't set up parents as returning is that before we removed that option, there were parents who were continuing to receive services for years, and their kids were not in the program anymore because they just rolled over every year. So in order to stop that, so we would have 20,000 active families and 50,000, or 20,000 active children and 50,000 families because they would never stop services. What we did is we stopped services for everybody at the end of the year, and you only start services again for families that actually came back. That's why again, if you can archive them, you should do so. That way we don't have extraneous people active in the system, which makes it move slower than it already does. Okay, so once you've scheduled your families, all families will appear on the ready for update list. And again, just like with the children, the all active families list should reflect 0 children. All right, so next week now, the final week before rollover, there are some things that you want to do now before we get to next year, because like I said, the universe ends on next Friday, and then when we come back, it's a new one. So you want to look into the system and make sure everybody is where they're supposed to be. And we're working, I know there's some outstanding tickets, we're working on getting those things resolved right now. Because in terms of enrollment status, program model, those kinds of things, we can't change them after we roll over. Nothing in terms of enrollment for 17-18 can be changed or touched or modified after we get to the new year. So look at your enrollment, look at your class list, look at your attendance reports, and make sure that everything looks right now, because lots of changes we just won't be able to make after we roll over. So anyone who's a child or family that is not returning, we can go ahead and archive them. Now is the question. I would, because the system is automated and there's a certain efficiency to it, I would just set them up the way that we're showing you rather than doing the archive. And when you come back on the 4th, they will already be archived. They'll be gone. Children who are already terminated, though, if they've already left and they're not in the classroom anymore, you do need to go in and archive manually, because the setup is only for kids who are still enrolled in the classroom. So kids who are on your terminated list, or kids who are on the waiting list from this year that didn't come and you're not expecting them to come back, for example, they're 5 or older and you're not a school age program, you should go ahead and archive them now. Okay. So make sure to look at all those things now. Oh, hi, Kathy. I got a question. What are the dates for next program year? Yeah, it's September 4th through September 2nd, and next year we'll start September 3rd. And then after that, because it's never the 1st, I'm not sure what the dates will be, but we'll have one of these years that's longer than 365 days, and that will make COPA unhappy with us for having two of the same, because there'll be 2 September 3rds in the next program year. But that's to come. For now, you're right. We'll go through Labor Day of 2019, and then we'll do this whole process again. Okay. So post rollover, this is, again, these are the things you can't do until you come back on the 4th. So don't worry about it now. Don't worry about it over the long weekend. Go and have fun, have a picnic, come back. And then when you come back on the 4th, first of all, you got to set up your classes. You're going to do the universal start end update. I'll show you that screenshot in a minute. You go into admin, and you'll put your beginning and end dates for your classes in there. If you're a year-round program, that's the same as the program year that we just talked about, and that will be the default that will show at the top of the screen. If you close early, so if you're a 10-month program, you want to change that end date to whenever the end date for the class is. Actually the day after, because you want to make sure you can take attendance on the last day. Let me see. That screen for old hands, that used to be all you did on the start end update. Now you'll be able to select teachers from that screen too the first time you go in there. So that will be nice. Okay. Is there anything we can do, is a question, pre-rollover to help students who have a duplicate name, date of birth, and family name? That's what I'm saying about tickets. We're working on resolving those cases this week. In some cases, we'll have to create a duplicate other than temporarily, so you can get attendance in before the end of the year. But if it's someone who is applying to your program or coming to your program but isn't going to start until the 4th, we're not going to be able to resolve that beforehand, because probably the reason there's a duplicate is they're actually attending another program this summer, and then we'll be moving over on the 4th. So for those cases, we will resolve them. We've got extra people coming on to help resolve those cases. For those cases, we'll have to resolve them after rollover, because we can't move the family pre-rollover, because that means the old agency can't take attendance. Do you have a ticket? Yes. The question is, are you creating a ticket for the children? We have to create a ticket for each child. For each child that's a duplicate, needs to have their own ticket, because the resolution might not be the same. Okay. So after the classes are set up for start services, you're going to go to the start services archive families. Again, you can't do this until post rollover. Remember, we only had the option to stop services for all families because we don't want families accidentally rolling over every year forever and ever. After you roll over, there'll be a way you can pick all the families to start services again. And remember, don't just do everybody, only return the ones who returned. And then the families that didn't return, and unfortunately, as well as we try to figure out, there's probably a certain percentage of families that everybody has that said they were going to come back and they don't. So make sure they're coming back first. If they're not, then you will archive that family, but not because it causes a lot of trouble, not with a date later than the 4th, okay? They don't come back, don't archive them on the 7th, archive them on the 4th. So if they're somewhere else, we can move them and they can start without a lot of work. That's what slows down the tickets. So I talked about the universal class start end update. Here we have the screenshot. I've got a question. Who can I contact to get access to the new health ticket system?
So on the COPA homepage, there's a link for the COPA help desk ticket system, and then there's a form that you have to submit a request form to gain user access.
So to speed things up, if you haven't done that, do that now. Don't wait until the 4th. Make sure you've got somebody in there today, so that once we come back, we can get started right away. So we're looking here at the start end, or the start end update for the classes. You notice that we've got the start and end date. You could enter them at the top if it's the same for everybody, and it will fill it in for every class. If you have some, although there's less of this now, you used to have some full day, full year classes and some half day classes, but most of the half day classes will not be around next year. For those, I think 3 or 4 agencies that will have them, remember to notice which ones they are and put the real end date in there to get out of having children show up as absent all summer. And then you can feed this for everybody. You look over here, though, this is the new-ish thing. This was here last year, but that was new last year. We've got the teachers, and you can pick up to 3 staff and put them in the classroom. You have to realize, though, that names only show up on these lists if they're already in COPA HR and associated with the right site. Otherwise, they won't be on the list, and you'll have to go in and put them in manually after that. We put them in HR and then assign them. Okay. Again, that's what I just said. Yes. You need to have a teacher and assistant teacher for every classroom that we fund, and we're going to be monitoring that very carefully in September and October. And if you don't have a teacher, you can't really enroll kids. So again, make sure if you've got new people coming on board, now is the time to put them in COPA HR. So when we get to September 4th, they'll be on the list already. Okay, and here's the start services screen. Again, everyone, when we roll over, will have a status of not receiving services, and you can start services. Again, checking the box on the left-hand side to pick the families, give them the start date, and hit start services. For families that did not come back, you'll do the same kind of thing, but you'll hit archive marked families. This will allow, we've ended services for everybody. This will allow you to move them all at the same time. Okay. Now I got a question. When do we enter new staff? So I'm going to go back for a second. The putting staff in the classroom is actually a two-step process. This is kind of, it makes sense for larger agencies, but for small ones, where it's the same person doing it, it's a little bit annoying because you need to log out of your HR user and log in as your admin user to complete it. But there's two steps for entering staff. The first is putting them in COPA HR, which means we have their name in there, their background check information in there, and their education credentials in there. So someone goes in and puts all that information in, so they show up in HR. And this will put them on the list here. The second step is the admin user then goes and assigns them to the classroom. So it's, like I said, it's a two-step process. When you enter them in HR, you should do that right now. If they're not in there, the HR user should go in and put their information in, upload their background check, and so on. But in terms of putting them in the classroom, if it's a new classroom that they're not in right now, then you will wait and you will do it from this screen after we roll over. So at the same time you go in here and put in the start and end dates, you'll go over to the teachers and make sure those teachers are in the right classroom. But you don't have to wait until rollover to start their file and put their information in COPA. You can do that right now. And it's probably easier to do that. Then you don't have to sit around doing that in September. You can just concentrate on putting the kids in the classroom. All right. Okay, so here's the next after rollover. What happens if my child is on the wrong list? So unfortunately, we can't undo the rollover because we can't change any enrollment related activity after we roll over. So if the child is on the waiting list and they were supposed to be on the eligible list, you need to accept them off the waiting list again. If the child is on the accepted list but should be on the waiting list, you'll hit, again, select the box next to the right name, and then you'll hit back to waiting list and send them back. Remember, because if you've got a lot of children, typically you don't get all of this done on the first day. Remember, on both of these screens, up in the upper left-hand corner, you see the date, the eligibility date, or down here on the ineligible list, it's as of a certain date, whether you're going to archive them or send them back, or whatever you do. Keep the first couple of weeks when you're making these changes, if the child's been there or not been there since the first day of class, continue to set that date back to September 4th. Because if you bring a child off the waiting list as of September 5th, because you don't get around to doing it until Wednesday, you can't put them then in the classroom starting the 4th, and you can't take attendance for the 4th. You're stuck with the 5th. So you can put them in the classroom after their eligibility date, but not before. So remember, before you do any of these things, if you don't get them done on that Tuesday, the rest of the week, keep setting that date back to Tuesday, so that you get the right date later. Okay. What if your currently enrolled children are not showing up? Only about half are. Well, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. So if you look in there and you see that children who are currently enrolled aren't on the enrolled children list, look on the other lists. Look on the returning child list, the recertify list, or the schedule for archive list. One thing that may be is that agencies that don't serve, because we had a lot of children who hadn't been set up a couple weeks ago, for agencies that we don't have any school age services at, people at DFSS have gone in and moved them to the archive list already. So, because we can rank that list by birth date order. So children who are 5 but who are in preschool for all or Head Start right now are probably on the schedule for archive list because they're not eligible to come back. They will be in kindergarten in a matter of a couple weeks if they're not already. That's an easy way to do it too. If we didn't get some of those, the kids who are 5, unless you're doing school age services, they're not returning. So don't mark them as returning. Okay. Next, we've got specific questions here. We've got some specific issues that relate to people who are, almost everyone's got childcare, but I mean people who are receiving childcare CCAP funds from DFSS and that's using COPA to bill. You need to, again, because we can't make certain changes after the rollover, you need to look at certain reports now and make sure the information is correct. So some of those reports, the 513 child care eligibility report, the 201 monthly attendance report, the 203 report. Look at all of those now. Don't wait until after the rollover to look at where things are.
One important thing is because with the new e-procurement process, I know childcare agencies, you haven't been able to view your July billing. And so because enrollment information, enrollment activity cannot change after rollover, we need you to run the 513 and cross-reference with the 201. And we'll have some screenshots so you'll be able to identify which fields to pull down on the 201.
Okay. All right, I have a question back on the issue of children not being on the enrolled list. All of my children are at birth to 3, so do not worry if the currently enrolled children are not showing up. It wasn't me if it was birth to 3 kids, because we only were looking at 5-year-olds. So again, I go in there and check, just look at the other lists and see if all the kids on the returning list are the returning kids, and that you don't have a schedule for archive kid who's actually returning, because then after the rollover happens, they'll be in the archive. You'll have to go dig them out. Which, if it's one child, isn't that much of a problem, but if half of your kids are missing, it'll be a lot more work than you really want to do. Okay. Okay. So again, things that you can't change after rollover is enrollment information. You can't change a program model, a program option, or an enrollment stat. That means if somebody enrolled on August 15th, or if somebody dropped on August 15th, but they're still showing as enrolled at the time that we hit the rollover, we can't go back and change it. So if somebody started, there's a little bit of less trouble this year, I think, than last year, because September 1st is a Saturday, Last year was Friday, and people in childcare wanted to do monthly enrollment, so they wanted to change program model as of the 1st, so they could have the September report have them in a certain model. And if you didn't do it before rollover, there was nothing we could do about it. You can't do it after rollover. So just don't, other months of the year, you might look at your billings and things the first couple weeks of the next month and fix everything. Now, for July and August, you really need to look in there right now and make sure it's okay right now. Don't wait to inspect things and make sure they're right next month, because it'll be too late. Okay, so again, the big part of that is, in order to bill, you've got to have attendance entered in COPA. And in order to enter attendance, children need to be enrolled. So make sure that that's the case. Right, here's 513.
So it's a 513 report. So you want to make sure that you filter by July 2018, and you click Run Report to view all your children. If there's if you're missing children on July, that means you would more than likely miss them on the billing, and we'll have slides about how to handle that situation.
Okay. I have a question for half-day Head Start with PFA, which is the program model. I didn't know that we still had those, honestly, so I'm not sure what to say about that. Yeah, I don't think our half-day rooms were open over the summer. If you have one that is, I don't think we did. I don't think I counted them. That's typically a 10-month program. But if they were enrolled in July and August, you need to make sure that whoever they're being paid, they have the model. But I don't think we do that. I don't think we're paying you for both for half day. We have collaborated some full day rooms because we can justify that the funding, that the salary support keeps the teacher in there the full day, but I don't think we collaborated half day. So I don't think we have that model anymore. It's something that our funders wouldn't let us do. And when are we going to attempt to do the rollover? I'm not sure what that means, but we're trying to test it, and it hasn't gone yet. We will actually do the rollover August 31st. Like I said, we'll shut the system down in the mid-afternoon to try to do it. Okay. Yeah, Head Start full day with PFA. I'm seeing that is a program model that's in there. So if you've got a child with both of those funding sources, but you don't have, it's not a child care model, then that would be Head Start full day with PFA. If it is, though, if you're billing us for child care, and this is one of the issues that we're talking about, it's got to say like Head Start collaboration with child care and PFA. Because the Head Start full day with PFA, you see how it doesn't say child care anymore? You can't bill, and if you don't fix that by next Friday, you won't be able to bill.
And when you're using Head Start collaboration with child care, make sure to use center-based full day and full year as the program option. And we have that on some slides to show you how you can look that up.
Like this one. So here is I think most people are familiar with this report, the 201, but what people might not be familiar with is that you can customize it. You see up there in the upper left-hand corner, there's a little customized link. And normally it's a plus, and when you click the plus and open it up, you see that you can display a child's date of birth, program model, program option.
So this is a report that for childcare agencies, you need to cross-reference the 201, customize, displaying the program model and the program option, cross-reference that with report 513. What you want to pay close attention to is the program option. that you have, it's listed childcare or school-age center, school-age home, childcare home, or center-based 5 days, full day, full year. If not, you will have an issue with billings. The other thing is attendance. So you want to pay close attention to July, and then you want to run these same reports for August. And if you're missing attendance for July, that is an immediate attendance request form to the ticket system. I think there'll be some deadline dates coming up later in the slides. And for August, you can fix that now.
So before we move on, look at this. I mean, it seems obvious, but I'm going to say this so everyone gets it in one time. If the program model doesn't say child care in it, you're not going to be able to bill for child care.
Collab, keep it at center-based, full day, full year. For child care program model, that program option should be child care.
Yes. Now the question, does the 513 only pertain if one has check with the FSA? Yes, it does. So it'll tell you have eligibility because you've got eligibility from us, and that gets put in from this end. So if it's from Action for Children, they're not using our system. I don't know what system they use.
Correct. Yeah, the 513 is just related to child care, which has been approved through us through the CAP system.
Okay. Okay, so to use that 201, again, you need to filter it down to the child level, the classroom level, so you can see the individual children's names, and then filter the program options to all to make sure that the Head Start collaboration and the non-Head Start but still receiving child care models all appear in the same classroom. And then you'll want to go to that customize link and add the program model option to make sure that those are correct. And any changes to those things, you need to submit them to us now. Okay, so next steps. Again, you're going to use the ticket system. And if you need access, fill out that form now. Any changes to the program model or option, you're looking at that now and you're seeing that that's wrong. You need to send us a ticket. We can't deal with the model instantaneously. It's actually a bit of work on our end. So we need you to do it by August 23rd. That's Thursday. So we can make sure to get all of that done. And that's any changes for July and August. Because the program year for childcare is July through June, any changes before then, it's too late. Don't submit it. Okay. If you use PFA full day for program model, should you use option PFA or center-based 5 days, full day, full year? It should be PFA, and if COPA is working correctly, you shouldn't be able to pick the other one. However, if it's childcare with PFA, childcare PS with PFA, right, it should be center-based.
Right. If it has our collaboration with childcare and PFA, then the option would be center-based 5 days, full day, full year.
Okay. Attendance 2, if you look in here and see that the attendance information is wrong for July, you need to submit that by Thursday. August attendance is still open. So here's you need to know that for starting the ticket. So if you can't take attendance for a day in August, it probably means that the child wasn't enrolled on that day. And that's something that needs to be fixed now. We can't fix that afterwards. Attendance, if the enrollment and program model information is correct, we can edit some attendance information after the rollover, but we can't edit the enrollment. So you need to look at it now, because sometimes when it's someone thinks it's an enrollment, it's an attendance opening issue, really they're not available on that day because the child wasn't enrolled on that day. So if you, for example, you started a child in a program today, you just enrolled them, they have a start date of whatever this is, the 21st, then you won't be able to take attendance on the 20th.
So for childcare, again, use 513, report 201. If a child is missing from 513, you also need to submit an OBIS ticket so that CCAP can review any eligibility issues for July or August. The OBIS system is open right now, so you can submit an OBIS ticket for July. And if days are missing, please submit, in addition to the attendance request form that goes into the ticket system, you also need to submit an OBIS ticket for tracking childcare issues. So if there's any eligibility or effective date issues that you're finding, please, and it does not match eSmart, please contact one of the CCAP supervisors. You have Margaret Jordan and Nicole Kraft. In terms of when the July billing will be available, recently Glenn Lazon, the director of finance, sent out an email notification, and he will send out communication to all child care agencies when the July billing is available. If you have further questions, you can contact him.
We've got a few more questions here. So a couple of them, I've got a couple of questions that are sitting here. I don't really have time to answer right now, and they're a complicated bag of worms. So would I mind explaining the difference between the program model and option? Send me an email and I'll do that, but it's not simple, because when COPA says program option, it's not the same thing as when other people do. So I'll get into that later on. Send me an email and I'll get back to you. So, someone else, I found my missing children on the returning back to eligible list. Do I still have to do the same process? If that's where they belong, then you don't have to do anything, because if they're returning and they're on the returning list, then you should be happy with that. If they're marked as returning but they're not returning, then you need to send them back to the eligible list and then put them in archive. Eligibility contacts. Yeah.
So we're showing that screen again. Again, if the eligibility information on the 513, if a child is missing for July, more than likely that's an eligibility issue, and it's not matching a child that's been identified in eSmart or a family that's been identified in eSmart as approved. Your contact CCAP supervisors are Margaret Jordan and Nicole Kraft. Okay.
Yeah, so I noticed that COPA changed the program model for some of our children to PFA only. We are a partner who have Head Start full day collaboration, child care, and PFA. Do I submit tickets? Yeah, submit tickets for those, because we'll have to figure out what's going on with those.
Yes, sure. For that, submit a ticket in the ticketing system, and then if your child care, submit a ticket in the ticketing system, as well as reaching out to Margaret Jordan and Nicole Kraft.
Okay, and I want to confirm the start and end dates both in 2018. No, the end date should be in 2019. So it's September 4th, 2018 through September 2019.
And then the next question, if the eligibility dates do not match, again, that's submitting an OBIS ticket so that CCAP can review the case. If the eligibility dates do not match what's been approved in eSmart, the next steps would be to submit a OBIS ticket, specifying the applicant and the child.
Okay. Okay. Again, the COPA homepage has the link, as you can see, the ticket system. If you're not familiar with that, haven't been using it so far. So that's really the where all the contacts for correcting things from our point of view need to come in, so that we can route them to the right person. Just a reminder before we go, Thursday is the EDPD meeting. That's the Executive Director, Program Director meeting. It's at the King Center on Cottage Grove. And everyone should be there, because we're going to be giving out important information about the upcoming year, including this piece that we're talking about now, but making sure that everything is in the right place. We're all in the right, all together in the right place when we're starting the new year. So we'd like everyone to come and participate in that. Okay, and what's the full year universal class start and end date? Again, it's September 4th through September 2nd. September 4th, 2018 to September 2nd, 2019. 364 days. All right, so thanks a lot.
Thank you.